Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test. Just checking my audio to make sure my audio is working. Talking to you tonight about part-time jobs, working as a driver, as a bus driver, or a taxi driver. There's lots of these jobs around, and lots of people who are going out and getting a Class 4 license, getting a Class F or G license, as it's called in Ontario. And my video here is just a bit overexposed here, so just bear with me here one sec while I uh, try and clean that up a little bit. It's the thing about all these different platforms. So Webinar Jam, YouTube, all of each one of them has different settings for what the video looks like, and it looks different again on my software here. So you got to get it all set up, and unfortunately, what happens is that it's not consistent across platforms, and I can't pre-save anything on my software. So anyway, without further ado, I've adjusted that so it looks a little bit better on YouTube there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about bus and taxi licenses tonight, how to get one, how to get a part-time job, what kind of things you'd be looking for, and so how to go about that and what kind of money you're going to be making as a bus or truck driver. As well, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about anybody getting a license, how to help you with a road test, how to help you be successful with a road test. So we're going to do all of that as well. And if you have any questions at all, CDL license, air brakes, we can help you with all of that. And to just remind you that on Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. I'm doing a webinar on air brakes, and to be talking about that and helping you be successful on your air brakes as well. And if you're just tuning in here, be sure to let us know down in the comments where you're tuning in from in the world, and that way we can help you out and we can give you some tips and tricks about those sorts of things. Because if you're in the state of New York or in New York City, there are some slight differences for you in terms of getting your licenses. For example, in New York State, or in New York City rather, in the 5 boroughs, you cannot turn right on a red light, so know that. And other than that, driving is more or less universal, and I'll just repeat, as I have said in the past, that if you're going for a road test, regardless of class of license, and you're not taking driving lessons with a driving instructor, with a local driving school, be sure to book a practice road test before you go out and do your actual test. And you should book those out about 3 weeks in advance. That way you're going to get one booked in 3 or 4 days before your road test, because you want to have an evaluation done before you go and do your road test by a driving instructor. Keep in mind that driving instructors teach people how to pass a road test every day. So this is what they do. They know the nuances of the local driving school, and they know what's going on with the driving examiners at your local DMV, at the Ministry of Transportation, at ICBC, whoever the licensing authority is that is going to be doing the testing. They will be able to know that. So just make sure that you book in a practice driving test. And some of these are not very expensive. Some of these driving tests at local driving schools. I know that Sam, who works at sorry, I'll try that again. Rookie Auto Driving School in the Bronx in New York State, or in New York City rather. It's only about $20 for a practice driving test with his schools, and as far as I'm concerned, it's $20 really, really well invested, because you're going to get feedback about your road test and the skills, techniques, and tips or abilities that you need specifically to be successful on your road test and pass your road test. So do that for sure. So we're just wait here a couple more minutes, getting a little slow getting started here tonight. I'm not sure what's going on. It's been a really odd weekend. It's been kind of quiet, so it's kind of quiet here on the live stream as well. But we're just getting going. So yeah, and so the people who this presentation will be for is anybody who's looking for part-time work, anybody who doesn't want to invest a lot of time and energy in trying to get another job, and somebody who wants a job that's going to be flexible in terms of their hours, that they can work around their lifestyle, what they're doing already in their life, and could pick up a little bit of work, maybe 15, 20 hours a week. So that's who this presentation is for in terms of getting a license to drive a bus or a taxi. And the other nice thing about this kind of work is that there is lots and lots and lots of opportunity, not just to drive a taxi, but these small buses less than 25 passengers. Most charities, most churches, senior centers, every one of these has one of these small buses, and it's a local weekend work, maybe 3 or 4 hours, taking a wine tour or something like that. So you can get your license to do that, and make a little bit of extra money. And there's some pros and cons, and I'll go over all that sort of thing. So again, if you're just tuning in, oh, okay, thanks, Corey. Is that what's going on? Let's make it public. There we go. That's very good. Thanks, Corey. No wonder I was like, 4 people? What's with 4 people? Oh, that's what's going on. Oh, crazy stream. There we go. Okay, so now we're public. Maybe everybody will show up now. That's why you're the moderator, Corey, because you let me know what's going on. So, yeah, that's what's going on. So, people will get the notification, so we'll just wait a couple of minutes here. But anyway, we'll just soldier on here. So what I'll do is I'll start working on the presentation here. So I'll transition over to that, and I'll go through the presentation, and hopefully some other people will get here. Odd. Oh, that's my mistake. How long have I been doing this now? A long time. Okay, so I'll just transition over to the presentation here, and we'll get going here. So just bear with me here. Here we go. All right. Okay. So, transition. So, there we go. So, you can see the presentation. You can see me, at least I hope so, and it's going public now. And so, basically, what we're talking about here, we're not talking about city bus driver. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I didn't change the title. I changed the image. We're talking about taxi drivers and bus drivers. And, we're not going to talk about Robert De Niro in his very early years of his career, starring in the movie Taxi Driver. Although there is a bit of drama with taxis, and I did drive taxis while I was at university. For a short period of time, maybe about a year, part-time, I drove taxis when the Blue Jays actually won back-to-back World Series. And so that tells you how long ago I actually drove, because I think that was in the late 80s that happened. And I'm always reminded of that because my friend has a poster of them winning the World Series. And it was one of the few nights that I actually made $300 in a night as a taxi driver, because there were just so many people out celebrating that the Blue Jays had won the World Series. So we're going to talk about being a taxi driver. We're going to talk about a little bit about that, and I'll give you some anecdotes later when people show up, and we can talk a little bit more about that. So for those of you who don't know me, Rick August, PhD, still learning the technology, still learning YouTube, and making sure that my videos or my live streams are set to public as opposed to private, and therefore people can tune in. I've been a driving instructor since 1997 for more than 2 decades now. I was a truck driver, a long-haul truck driver in the 1990s, and drove in Canada and the United States, mostly along the eastern seaboard, and was in and out of New York and most of the major metropolitans up and down the East Coast. And when I moved to Australia in the early 2000s, I drove Greyhound and regional buses there, so I have experience as a bus driver as well. And when I was in Australia, I went to graduate school, went to university, and got a doctorate in legal history. And for those of you that don't know, legal history is the study of courts, policing, and prisons. And my expertise is in policing, specifically as it relates to traffic, because I became really fascinated with the idea of traffic as a social activity and how it is policed and regulated by law. And what really kind of started me down the path of doing graduate work in policing and traffic was the question, do people obey speed limits because they fear the law or because they respect the law? And as I got into further and further research on that, I realized that most drivers rather, view traffic crime, it's not really traffic crime, but traffic violations as a victimless crime. It's kind of like tax evasion or tax fraud. They see it as a victimless crime, that nobody gets hurt, and as long as nobody gets hurt, then they can do it. So a lot of people speed because of that thinking. And so it was an interesting 3 years of looking at traffic and looking at policing and how we regulate that. So that's me in a nutshell. So if you're new to driving and you're working on driving, one of the most difficult maneuvers that you're going to encounter is turning left at complex intersections. And I talk about this a lot because it's one of the most dangerous maneuvers, one of the most high risk maneuvers that you can do when you're learning how to drive, because you need to judge gap. You need to ensure that the oncoming traffic is coming to a stop if you're turning on a yellow light. So make sure you have a look at these two videos here. Turning left in left center turning lanes. These are turning lanes that are in the center of the roadway. And as well, make sure that the oncoming traffic is in fact coming to a stop if you decide to go through on a yellow light, or you're turning left on a yellow light. Corey will find both these videos for you and put those up there for you as well. All right, so changing careers, working as a bus driver, working as a taxi driver. Yes, there's a lot of trepidation in terms of changing careers, and it can be a bit daunting because you don't really know what you're getting into, and you don't know if you're going to invest a few $100s to get your class 4 license, or your G or your F, or whatever it is called where you are in the world. You know, you're going to invest that money. Is that money going to come back? And I can almost assure you, as a driving instructor who taught a lot of people to get their class 4 license, that there's return on investment, and there's plenty of jobs. There's no shortage of jobs driving small buses, driving taxis, or even driving a limousine. You know, hotel shuttles, airport shuttles, you know, running out to the local winery, those types of things. So there's lots and lots of jobs. And one of the things I would suggest to you is have a look at this video here on Job Search with Bill Walker. Bill was older. He was in his 60s, early 60s, when he changed careers and became a truck driver. And he had a plan to go up north and work in the oil patch and drive truck for a couple of years. And he did that, and he retired, and you know, he executed his plan. He was there for a short period of time and did that. And essentially what the people I'm talking to today about is taxi drivers, limousine drivers, people that want to supplement their income. They already have a full-time job, or they already have a job or a source of income, and they simply want to make a little bit more money. So they want to get a job as a taxi driver. They want to get drive a small bus or something like that. There's lots of employment there. There's lots of opportunities. You just sort of need to look around. And what I would suggest is, even before you get your license, start looking around. And the other aspect of this type of employment is that there's a lot of places, like, for example, if you work for the hospital or you already work in a senior's home, you could increase your responsibility and potentially get a pay hike, because now you can drive the bus as well. So that's the other aspect of this. So as I was saying, there's lots of jobs. You can work as a taxi driver, limousine driver, shuttles back and forth to the airport. Local charities, most of these local charities all have these small buses, 15-passenger vans, senior homes, hotel shuttles, local churches. Everybody has one of these small buses that they need somebody to drive. And you know, and for people who are retired as well, this is a great opportunity for them too. So the class of license you need is a class 4 license, F and G in Ontario, and you know, other places will have different designations for it. Essentially, it's a bus license less than 25 passengers. And I know here in British Columbia we have a class 4, which is a bus less than 24 passengers, or we have a class 4 unrestricted. Anybody who's going to go for a class 4 license is simply going to get a full license. They're not going to get the restricted one. And when we were at the driving schools, we always encourage people to just get the full license, because it's basically an advanced class 5 license, a passenger vehicle license with a pre-trip inspection. That's all it is. There's a couple of other things that you have to learn. You have to know how to back up. You have to know to get out of the vehicle and do a walk around before you back up, and you honk the horn. That's basically it. And you need to do a pre-trip inspection, which you're allowed 20 minutes to do your pre-trip inspection. It's easy to get it done within that amount of time. So it's the same as any other commercial license. You have to go and write a learner's permit, and then you have to do a practical test. And the learner's permit is, I think it's 40 questions, and it's some advanced information about convex mirrors and those types of things. You know, passenger safety is your number one priority and those types of things. But for the most part, it's multiple choice with some images and whatnot. And there's lots of practice driving test questions around on the web that you can find that will help you out. All right, so getting one of these jobs is I talked some months ago about getting a job as a transit driver, and there's a pretty formal process in terms of getting a job as a local transit driver, because they're unionized, they have a lot of drivers, they invest a lot of money in training. With these jobs as or taxi and bus drivers rather, it's fairly straightforward. You submit an application. It's somewhat informal. You might be interviewed by one person. Your applications and references will be checked. You'll have to submit a driver's abstract, and some of these places where you're working with minorities, not minorities rather, sorry, with youth, you're going to have to have a criminal record search. And a driver's abstract, for anybody who doesn't know about getting a job as a commercial driver, you have to have a driver's abstract. And essentially a driver's abstract shows your driving record for the last 5 years, whether you have a speeding ticket or whether you have any crashes or negligent driving or those types of things. And you want to have a fairly clean driver's abstract. Maybe 1 or 2 speeding tickets is fairly common. Try not to have seatbelt fines and those types of things, because all of that's going to come up if you're going to work for as a CDL driver. It's not such a big deal if you're going to go and work as a taxi driver if you're not wearing your seatbelt and those types of things. There are some exemptions for different types of drivers, garbage truck drivers and taxi drivers and those types of things, that you don't have to wear seatbelts. And if you're unsure about that, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but just look at the local highway traffic act in your state or province, and that'll tell you whether you need to wear your seatbelt. But anyway, that's an aside from what I was talking about. But this is the interview process. As I said, it's informal, oftentimes just application of references. And if you go to a local driving school to do your training, you could even get a reference from the one of your driving instructors. They would be willing to write you a reference, driver's abstract, and a criminal search if you're working with youth. Okay, so the pros of this type of work is that you're always employed, because if you're just willing to look around and talk to people, there's always some organization that needs people to work, right? The unfortunate part is that it's never 40 hours a week. You're not going to get a job driving a small bus 40 hours a week. You might get a job driving a taxi 40 hours a week, but I can tell you from personal experience that Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, until sort of, people get near the end of the week, there's not a great deal of work, and you spend a lot of time sitting around, unfortunately, because, and of course, different places, different geographical locations are going to have different requirements for taxis, but for the most part, not a lot of people take taxis during the early part of the week or during the day. Okay, there's no uniforms required. Some of these jobs may require a uniform, but for the most part, you're not going to have to wear a uniform. Flexible hours, and it's part-time work to supplement your income, right? The cons of this is that there's no security in, driving a taxi. There's no security in driving a small bus. It's undesirable work hours for the most part. It's weekends and nights. But as I said, if you're trying to supplement your income, this is going to work really well for you. Customer service, you're the frontline worker. You're dealing with people. I mean, some people are introverts and those types of things, and they don't want to. But you're going to have to, okay? It's not long-term employment. It's not something you're going to do for the rest of your life. And unfortunately, the wages are going to be a bit lower. Most of it's going to be around minimum wage. It's going to be sort of $15 to $20, or it might be by the trip or those types of things. So there are some, cons to doing this type of work, but if you're just looking for part-time work, it can be really great. And if you're looking to get into a bigger organization, you don't have any experience, this could be a great stepping stone for a better job and working in a bus company or getting full-time employment or those types of things. So one of the things I said is you have to do a pre-trip inspection. It's an advanced passenger vehicle license. All the requirements are the same, that you got the 4 major components of a road test: speed management, space management, observation, communication. All of that stuff is in place. You got to do a pre-trip inspection. You have 20 minutes to do a pre-trip inspection. You got to check under the hood, all the fluids and components, secure, not damaged, not leaking. That's essentially your mantra for going around the vehicle. Or if there's damage to the vehicle and it doesn't affect the safety of the vehicle, no new damage, like there's a scratch on the side of the bus or something like that. But if there's major defects to the bus, like for example, you have a large cut in the side of one of the tires, you cannot use that to transport passengers. You have to get that tire fixed. All right, so you're going to go under the hood, then you're going to go into the vehicle, into the cab. You're going to check all the controls in the vehicle, the lights, the signals, the heater controls, nothing on the dash, nothing on the floor. You're going to go through the vehicle. You're going to check all the seats and seat belts and make sure everything's working. For commercial vehicles, you're going to need emergency equipment inside the vehicle. So the emergency equipment consists of flares, fire extinguisher, and flashlight fluids. And I'm missing one. Just a minute here. It's the 5 F's: flashlight, flares, fluids, fluids. It'll come to me here in a minute. First aid kit, that's it. So in a commercial vehicle, you need fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and flares. Yes, those three things must absolutely be in the vehicle. So fire extinguisher, first aid kit, and flares. And they're not flares in this day and age, they're triangles. So that's what I was trying to remember in terms of emergency equipment. And you have to check all the exits on the vehicle to make sure they're working in case of a crash, that people can escape from the vehicle. And outside the vehicle, you're going to go around the vehicle. You're going to check all the lights, the brake lights, the reverse lights, turn signals, component systems outside the vehicle. And then at the last of the pre-trip inspection, you're going to do a test. And have a look at this video here, and Corey will put that up for you. Pre-trip fundamentals. And remember, for the purposes of a road test, you're not doing a pre-trip inspection on the vehicle to determine if the vehicle is safe. Rather, you're doing a pre-trip inspection on the vehicle to demonstrate a competency. You're demonstrating to the examiner that you in fact do know how to do a pre-trip inspection. All right, practical test driving. It's the same as a passenger vehicle. It's going to be about 20 minutes in duration. You need to obey all road signs. Now, for a class 4 vehicle, it's not likely they're going to make you parallel park. They might make you parallel park in a parking space somewhere in a closed circuit area, but for the most part, they're not going to make you parallel park a bus on a road test. They may, if you're doing a taxi license, they might, but for the most part, if you're driving a bus, 15 passenger van or a small bus, they're not going to make you do that. But have a look at this video here and it'll go through what you need to do for the purposes of passing a road test. All right, and as I mentioned previously, in terms of the Class 4 license test, you do need to back up. Oftentimes when you come back at the end of the test, they'll just make you back into a parking space away from other vehicles and whatnot. And you need to stop the vehicle. You need to do a walk around. You need to check your path of travel, check for obstructions, and you need to ensure that there aren't any pedestrians or whatnot in the area where you're going to be backing up. You get back in the vehicle. For CDL licenses, you don't have to have your seatbelt on when you're backing up. But I would suggest for the purposes of a road test that you do put your seatbelt back on. You can activate your four-way flashers. You can beep the horn if it doesn't have a beeper on the vehicle already, and then back up and go slowly. You want to go slowly and you want to observe as much as possible. If you can't see out the back window of the bus, you're going to have to learn how to use the mirrors, which is going to be a bit more challenging for a lot of people. All right, so that's essentially a Class 4. I'll answer any questions about taxi driving or small bus driving. And if you decide to do that, good luck on your road test. And if you have any more questions, by all means, ask me questions here now that maybe were public on the live stream. And there'll be some people who show up here. So I'll just transition back over here. All right, and we're back. And look, there's 12 people here now. Oh my God, so there we go. So we have some people here, and yeah, because I made the error of not setting the thing to public, so it didn't get put up on YouTube and all the places and whatnot. So here we are. Okay, so Corey's here. Corey's got those videos up for Justin. There you are. So if you're just tuning in to the live stream here that we actually got up and is now live, do let us know where you are tuning in from in the world. Let us know what class of license that you're working for. If you are looking for part-time work, now that we talked a little bit about driving a bus or driving a limousine. And Justin's here, Ben's here, and I'm glad that we could help there, Ben. That's really great. Ashley's here. Okay, and Ashley's here and she's tuning in, and that's really great. She's not going to get a bus or truck license, or bus or limousine taxi license, but definitely helping out. So if you have any questions at all, I think this live stream, unfortunately, because I didn't set it to public, is going to be a little bit slower than most, and unfortunately that's my fault. Now, Aid is here. Aid is from Toronto. That's really great. And what class of license, Aid, are you going for that you're getting here? So now I'll tell you some taxi stories, because I did have some taxi stories. And of course, if you haven't seen the movie with Robert De Niro in his very young career, definitely watch Taxi. Taxi Driver is one of the best ones. Justin is from Kitchener, Ontario. That would be my old stomping ground. I'm originally from London, Ontario, and that's where I drove cab. And I'm just trying to think about what it is when people have the sleeping disorder when they fall asleep. Is it narcoleptic? No, narcoleptic, that's when people hurt themselves or take drugs or something. Anyway, he had a sleep disorder, and he was working the night shift, driving cab, and his name was Cliff, and he wasn't in good shape. He'd been driving cab for years and years and years, and so I ended up driving taxi cab. And oftentimes what happens is there's two drivers on a taxi cab. So one guy works the day shift for 12 hours and one guy works the night shift for 12 hours. And I was running the night shift with this guy, and he knew Cliff. And he said Cliff came to pick him up one morning, and he couldn't figure out why Cliff wasn't there. And he, like an hour or 2 hours later, he finally got a hold of him. You have to remember, this is the day before cell phones, so you can't just call people, right? And so what happened is that Cliff finally showed up like a couple hours later. But what had happened is he had parked in somebody else's driveway and then had proceeded to fall asleep. And narcolepsy, there we go. Yeah, I think it's narcolepsy when you just fall asleep. And passengers would complain about Cliff. He would come up to his traffic light and there'd be passengers in the back seat, and he'd just fall asleep at the traffic light, and then he'd just kind of wake up. And I was talking to him one night on a taxi stand. We were kind of backed in, talking to each other at the window, and he just like fell asleep in the middle of a conversation. So one of the funny stories about driving cabs in the day. Ashley, if you're in traffic and the light in front of you is green, but going through it would mean going into and proceeding into the intersection. So Ashley, I think what you're asking me is if you're at an intersection, you're waiting with your front tires on the front crosswalk line, if the light is going to change. So what happens is that as you're sitting there waiting for the light, you know it's going to change to yellow. Excuse me. You know it's going to change to yellow. So as you see your gap coming, you start moving forward into the intersection to meet that gap. And the other thing is, as you're moving straight into the intersection, you're gaining a bit of momentum with the vehicle too. So when the gap presents itself, you've got a bit of momentum and you can just turn left around the corner. So that's what you want to do. Okay. There we go. Perfect. So Corey has said narcolepsy is in fact the disorder of falling asleep, and this is what this guy Cliff had. Was he just fell asleep. Now the other thing, driving taxi at night, you're going to pick up the people who have just got out of the bar and those types of things. So people are inebriated, and unfortunately, I think I only ever had one person throw up in my cab, which is very gross because there's nothing worse than that smell in your vehicle. So it takes a bit to get rid of it. And know that. So what else? Some other interesting things. And you are going to get some people who are doing interesting things. I did have people in the cab at night where they would tell you to go to a certain address. They wouldn't give you the specific address, but they just tell you where to go on the street, and they would get you to park somewhere. They would get out of the cab and they'd say wait. They'd give you a few dollars to wait for them, and then they would go into a building that was dark, like very dark, no lights on, and we're talking 2 or 3 in the morning, and then they would just come back and get in the cab. You knew something was not on the legit, but you never really asked. You just took them where. And I never really had any problems with driving cabs. So okay, so Ashley, going back to Ashley's question about proceeding through the intersection. But what if there's traffic ahead and you don't have enough room to make it all the way through the intersection? Straight through the intersection. Ashley, if you're, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm quite clear on what exactly it is you're asking me in terms of proceeding through the intersection. I'm just going to go back here and see if you're in traffic and the light in front of you is green, but going through it would mean going into and stopping in the intersection. Should you proceed or should you stay behind the light? Oh, I'm sorry, Ashley. My apologies. I know exactly what you're asking me now. Yes, exactly what Corey said here. Try avoid blocking the intersection. So stay at the light if you suspect you would block the intersection. Yes, if the traffic is backed up on the other side of the intersection, Ashley, yes, do not proceed into the intersection. Wait on the other side of the intersection. And there's a video here. Don't block the intersection. Corey might be able to find that for you. I think it's a pretty old video, but don't block the intersection at all. If you block the intersection, that's an automatic fail on a road test. Excellent question. Absolutely excellent question. I'm glad we cleared that up for you. All right, so we have a few more people on the live stream here. If you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what class of license that you're going for. We might run a little bit longer tonight because unfortunately when I started the video, I had I had the setting to what did I have it to? I had it off. It wasn't on public. Anyway, I'm learning here, and it's just one of those goofy things that happen. I don't know. I saw it this morning, and I was like, what? And I didn't change it. And that's a new one for me. So just let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know what class of license you are. If you're new to Smart Drive Test, consider subscribing. Hit that thumbs up button as well. Leave a comment down there. Ask me a question. I'll be more than happy to help you out and answer any questions that you might have. And I am almost right on the brink of getting the winter driving course up. I should have it up tomorrow or Tuesday, so I'll also send out a message about that. And if there's any videos that you want, by all means, leave me a comment and I'll help that out. Not a problem, Ashley. It was just I didn't read the question correctly at the beginning there, so I think it was partly my fault. So there's the video. Corey actually did find it for you, so that's really great. All right, and so what else happened? Driving taxi. I told you I drove taxi when the Blue Jays won the World Series, and there was just a heap of people in the downtown area in London, Ontario, where they had won. A lot of people celebrating, so that was interesting. And like I said, I made a lot of money, and mostly what I was running people back and forth from downtown to the university, where in London, Ontario, is Western University. I'm an alumni of Western. So Dalton's here from Northwest Pennsylvania, and Dalton, I believe, if I remember correctly, you were on the webinar last week for air brakes. So if we can help you with anything with getting your CDL, Dalton, by all means, and we can help you with that. And again, for the people that might be tuning in, there's a webinar. I'm going to hold a weekly webinar now on air brakes. So if you're getting your CDL license and you do need your air brakes, tune in on Tuesdays, have a look for that. You can go over to the website, the Smart Drive Test website, and sign up for that as well. And the other benefit of getting a license for a taxi or a small bus is that you don't need an air brake endorsement. Most of these small buses, all of the taxis are all going to have hydraulic brakes on them. So you're not going to have a air brake endorsement for the purposes of getting one of those licenses. Okay, you just have to test the brakes at the end, and it's just two tests. It's testing the parking brake to make sure that it holds the vehicle, and to test the parking brake, you apply the parking brake, put it on, and then just put the vehicle in gear and just give it a little bit of throttle and see if the vehicle holds. If the vehicle holds, then you know that the parking brake works, and then you're going to release the parking brake, you're going to roll ahead a couple of feet, and you're going to test the service brake. So you're going to test the foot pedal to make sure that the brakes actually hold and apply. Okay? Epic, watching from Phillipsburg, New Jersey. And for a transit bus or minibus, do they have to open the doors when approaching a railroad crossing? Regarding dead animals on the road, should I put my wheels on center? Okay, so not as a rule, the smaller buses don't have to stop at railway crossing. And Epic, that tends to be a state-to-state thing, and it tends to be a province-to-province thing. Some of the buses, depending on coach or school bus, if they're bigger, they have to stop at all railway crossings. And I know here that all school buses have to stop at railway crossings, open the doors, and listen and look for trains. And dead animals on the road, depending on what kind of animal it is. If it's a smaller animal, then yes, you do want to try and center the animal, so you want it to go underneath the undercarriage. If it's a bigger animal, you're going to have to try and drive around it, like if it's a deer or something like that. Okay, so Dalton, the webinar was informative. Thank you. You are very welcome. Dalton, after I did the webinar last week, I was thinking that I needed to back up a little bit, and I needed to explain what a spring was, I needed to explain what a valve was, and I needed to explain exactly what a brake was. Could you just let me know if you think that would be helpful in understanding the basics of air brakes? If you don't understand, if you don't have sort of if you're not mechanically minded, is what I'm trying to say. So for example, say that somebody came into a course and they didn't know anything about a car. They knew they got in a car and you pushed down the brake pedal, the vehicle came to a stop, but they had no idea how it came to a stop. because like I said, I'm just about finished an air brake manual, and I'm trying to explain the very fundamentals that have been missing in many of these air brake courses. Because when students come into these air brake courses, they're just kind of like launched into it. They're not. There's no discussion of fundamentals. They just assume that students know what a valve is. They just know what a brake is or a spring or whatnot. So, yeah, if you could just let me know if that might be helpful, that'd be great. Okay, so taxi stories. What else can I tell you? Yes, I picked up a few drunk people. And sitting around in the middle of the night driving when there's no traffic and those types of things, because after the bars close at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, it's pretty quiet the rest of the night if you're working the night shift from, say, sort of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. And lots of people are just going to go home at that time. They're not going to work. All about vehicles. How are you? Yes, you haven't been around for a while. You got your G2. I now drive a Chrysler 200. Front wheel drive with Bluetooth and heated seats, and have Yokohama snow tires on. Awesome. That's really great. Okay, thanks, Dalton. I really appreciate that. Okay, Justin, actually not planning to get bus or taxi license, just tuning in. However, must acknowledge your videos helped me a lot in getting my G2 and G license last month. You are most welcome, Justin. And Justin, if you haven't signed up for or registered rather, with the 100K campaign, that would be really great. If you could head over to the Smart Drive Test website and do that, that would be really awesome. So, my father has a 2018 Ram, and my mother drives. So you're all Dodge people. Yeah, my dad was a Dodge person. Actually, he was such a fierce patriot of Dodge. And patriot, is that the right word? Of Dodge, that when his company offered him a pickup truck, a Chevy pickup truck, he wouldn't drive it because he was just fiercely loyal to Dodge. So there you go. All right, so yeah, so with cab drivers, the other interesting thing about being a cab driver, and I remember this specifically, is that when I drove cab, people would get in the back of the cab, and they would just unload. They would just tell you their most intimate and personal parts of their life when they got back in the cab. And I don't know what it is about people who ride in cabs that they feel that they can just kind of talk to the cab driver and really be intimate. I mean, some people don't want to talk to you, but other people will do that. So there you go. And there's Sam tuning in. Yes, we finally went publicly live, and Sam's here from Auto Rookie Driving School in the Bronx and teaching driving down there. Patron, there we go. Thanks, Ashley. And yes, so Sam is here. Sam also has a YouTube channel teaching driving lessons by Big Mac Sam. And so be sure to head over to his channel and check out his channel there. And if you're in New York City, in the Bronx, look up Sam and do some driving lessons with Sam. And as well as I said previously, that if you need a practice driving test prior to going and taking your actual road test, Sam can do that as well. And it's a really good investment of about $20. My father had to get his company to get him a Ram for his work truck. Doesn't like Fords, especially Ford 1F50s. Yeah, some people are pretty fierce about their loyalty to either Chevys, Fords, or Dodge pickup trucks. So different people are interesting that way. And, but I'm kind of the same, that I won't drive anything but a Honda or a Toyota. Maybe a Nissan. If I was going to buy a big pickup truck, I might think about buying a Titan. But other than that, I don't think that I would be driving a domestic vehicle. Unfortunately, if they're new, yeah, that's fine. But I think most of these, unfortunately, these domestic pickup trucks, once they hit about 150,000 kilometers, about 100,000 miles, unfortunately, they start to deteriorate at that point. Sam, you're most welcome. Thank you for your continued support of my channel. It's been really great. So, yeah. So, I think we're going to wrap up early tonight because there's not a lot of people here. And unless you have questions, if you're tuning in, hit that thumbs up button. Be sure to leave me a comment if you're new to Smart Drive Test or you have any queries about getting your license, being successful in that. By all means, leave a comment down in the comment section there. But I think, partly my fault that the video didn't go out it didn't go out public. So, yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll just wrap it up there. And if anybody has any questions at all, leave me a comment, and we'll make sure that we answer those and get you being successful in getting your road test. Keenan, all our vehicles are dark red in color. My father also has a Challenger red eye. Yeah, so that's a fast car. Awesome. All right, so we're just going to wrap it up there. If you like what you see here, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and be sure to share the video. And if you're considering having looking for some part-time work, it's pretty easy to get a license. Getting a license as a taxi driver or a small bus, and there's lots of work around, so you can do that. Sam, didn't see your last video, but I'll definitely head over there and check it out now. Okay. Corey, what's the vehicle I've had the most frustration with? Actually, I've been pretty good because I haven't actually, Corey, believe it or not, I have not owned a lot of vehicles in my life. So when the whole 7 years I was in Australia, I never had a vehicle. I just used other people's. So anyway, we're gonna leave that. We're just gonna leave that there. My final G highway test in Ontario in a few days. Okay, Aid, definitely have a look at the video on mock road test, how to pass a road test. Corey will get that up for you. And yes, you can get a Class F in Ontario. That's correct, and it's Class F, or it's a H, A, B, C, D, E, F. It's an E or an F. One is for school bus, and one is for passengers without less than 25 passengers. So that's Ontario for sure. Okay, Aid, so have a look at that video. Corey will get that up for you. And yeah, we're just going to wrap up. We'll just leave it there. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to give it a thumbs up. Give the video a thumbs up. And we look forward to talking to you more in the future. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.